A Canada-U.S. trade battle has begun and the gloves are off. I'm Mercedes Stevenson. The West Block starts now.
They'll be putting the tariff of 25% on Canada.
Canada will be responding with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods.
Yesterday, Donald Trump officially announced massive tariffs will be slapped on most Canadian goods. And within hours, Justin Trudeau hit back. How did it go down and what could happen next? Dominic LeBlanc was behind the scenes for all of it. He joins us in just 2 minutes.
We'll help you go. Congratulations, Mr. President.
And it's been 2 weeks since Trump was sworn into office. What's the view been like from inside America? We speak with former Trump insider Anthony Scaramucci and Washington journalist Katty Kay. Canada and the U.S. are now officially in a trade war. New substantial tariffs on both sides will be in place this Tuesday. Late yesterday, the president laid down the gauntlet, ordering a 25% tariff on Canadian goods sent to the U.S. and 10% on Canadian energy. A few hours later, Justin Trudeau retaliated.
Tonight, I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods.
That's nearly a quarter of everything America sends north of the border, from Florida orange juice to household appliances.
We are considering, with the provinces and territories, several non-tariff measures, including some relating to critical minerals, energy, procurement, and other partnerships.
All this while the two leaders haven't even spoken to each other since Donald Trump's inauguration. And a potential trade war has been on the horizon for some time. The question is, where do things go from here? Joining us now is Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc. He is the chair of the recently formed Cabinet Committee on Canada-U.S. Relations. Thank you for joining us, Minister.
Good morning, Mercedes.
Wow, what a time to be alive and to be a cabinet minister in Canada. You're dealing with an unprecedented situation with our biggest ally, our closest trading partner, and we're now in what many are calling a trade war. I know you spoke to your counterpart, Secretary Lutnick, last night, yesterday morning. Have you heard from him since, and what did he say to you?
So I've been having ongoing conversations with Mr. Lutnick. He's prudent. He's not yet confirmed by a final vote in the United States Senate. He had a hearing. So the incoming secretaries are careful not to speak for the government or to make commitments for the government. They're not voted on in terms of officially assuming those functions by the Senate. But I've maintained with him since the original dinner at Mar-a-Lago at the end of November, sort of an ongoing exchange. I saw him between Christmas and New Year's, again in Florida. He was nice enough to call me yesterday morning and describe the measures that were going to become public yesterday and come into effect Tuesday. And we talked about an ongoing conversation after he's confirmed about what we could do quickly in Washington to see if this could be a limited circumstance. I wonder if there's in fact a lot of planning that's going on in the administration in terms of the duration of these measures. It's very unpredictable. It was a nice word for it. But we'll continue to discuss with them and engage with them. Melanie Joly, my colleague, spoke to Secretary Rubio, who's been confirmed as a Secretary of State. So there are these ongoing conversations, but I think we have to buckle up, Mercedes, and we have to, as you said, this is an unprecedented circumstance, and we're prepared to deal with it for as long as it's required.
I know you must have some modeling around this because there was warning it was coming. You're the finance minister. How bad could this get for the Canadian economy?
It could be very difficult. It'll be very difficult for the American economy too. That's the irony of the thing. What President Trump did yesterday will be very quickly very difficult for American businesses and American consumers. But you're absolutely right. Canadian businesses, those that are export dependent. I come from New Brunswick, proportionately the most export dependent province of all the provinces. So this will be felt right across the country in different sectors at different times. So we think it could be difficult. It could be difficult for a lot of businesses that buy things from the United States that would be inputs into supply chains. I mean, unscrambling an omelet is not an easy thing to do. So the economies of the two countries are so integrated and have been for decades, since Mr. Mulroney's initial free trade agreement with Ronald Reagan. The economies have continued to be integrated, and it's frankly brought economic benefits to both countries. That's why this decision by President Trump yesterday is surprising if the objective is to pursue American economic growth and prosperity. We don't think, and many economists and legislators and business leaders in the United States have said that this isn't the way to do it. But he's made this decision. Canadians expected us to respond. We did. And now we'll work with provinces and territories to support sectors and workers that will have to go through some of this turbulence to come out the other side.
Donald Trump has said that if Canada fights back with retaliatory tariffs, which we are, it will get worse. Do you have a sense of what that means, of how much those tariffs may increase further, or what his strategy is going to be to try to punish Canada for retaliating?
So, no, I wouldn't say we have details of what that might look like. We took note, obviously, of what he said publicly, and in the executive orders that became public at the end of the day yesterday, there's a mention that, you know, the president might or would consider responding if a country responded. But again, no sovereign country faced with this economic threat would not respond. Canadians properly expected their governments, plural, provincial and federal, to work together and to respond in a firm and proportionate, appropriate way. We're not seeking to escalate this. We were careful. The tariff is at 25%. That's the rate that he chose. Where the initial $30 billion of imports to Canada are largely consumer products for which Canadians might have an alternative. If you're buying a washing machine made in the United States, there are some that might be made in Korea or Europe that could be substitutes. So we're trying not to, in the first tranche that goes into effect Tuesday, create economic hardship on Canadian consumers. But the second tranche necessarily will involve things that Canadian businesses may use in their manufacturing process, or things that there may be less easy substitutes. So it will be difficult for Canada, but Canadians want the government to stand up, and they want us to stand up in the face of this unreasonable decision by Mr. Trump.
What do you think this is really about? I mean, in writing it says it's about fentanyl. Is this really about finding another source of revenue for a government that is looking at potentially cutting income tax in the U.S., or is it actually about fentanyl?
So again, I'm not a psychiatrist. I wouldn't presume to imagine what is in the mind of different decision makers in the United States. But your question is bang on, Mercedes. This might generate revenue for the American government. They have huge deficits if they want to also cut income tax. This is a potential alternative source of revenue for them. Problem is, it's coming out of the pockets of American businesses and consumers. Like, the money's coming from somewhere, and it's not coming out of a printing press at the U.S. Federal Reserve. Your question around fentanyl and border security is also bang on. Less than 1% of the fentanyl seized in the United States is traced back to Canada. Now, 1% is 1% too much. We're all in on the fight against fentanyl. We said that to the president. As you said, we've stepped up. We've done with Americans. We've taken additional steps around securing the border. The RCMP have additional resources around, and border security, CBSA, the Border Security Agency, around detecting and prosecuting, investigating and prosecuting those that would participate in this. So, but at the end of the day, you're right. If the imposition of these tariffs at such a punishing rate is designed to deal with 1% of the fentanyl that may have come into the United States. Our objective is not to brace and prepare for a long, protracted series of measures and countermeasures. That's certainly not in our economic interest or the United States. So we think that if we remain focused on that, we could perhaps get to a position, as we did some years ago, where they decide to lift these.
A bit of a double-barreled last question for you. We learned last night, quite surprisingly actually, that the Prime Minister has not managed to speak with President Trump, despite what sounds like attempts to do so, since he was inaugurated. Does that create a problem for moving past these tariffs? And connected to that, he also said he doesn't need to recall Parliament because he has all the tools he needs to deal with this, and that might well be true. But sometimes what you can do and what you should do are different things. Do you agree that Parliament should remain prorogued?
U.S. There's not double barrel, it's like a quadruple barrel
I'm
question.
an expert at that.
Yeah. That's why you're a senior national journalist. So let's start with the first question, or the last question. We believe we have all the tools as a government to respond to support Canadians and Canadian businesses. As we did last night, the orders in council that will bring these tariffs into effect on Tuesday are being signed today and tomorrow. So we have all these instruments. We're encouraged by the provinces, by provincial leaders who want to work with us and also use provincial government resources and programs to support sectors of the economy, workers. So there really is a joint effort underway. We've said we'll do what is necessary to support workers in the Canadian economy. So we're going to continue to ensure that we have all the tools necessary. We believe that very much is the case. And we also think, Mercedes, that the Americans will come to the conclusion that this is not in their economic interest to continue. So we're hopeful that ongoing conversations, and ultimately the President and the Prime Minister will have a conversation. He said that last night. There are discussions between various ministers and their counterparts a number of times, even yesterday. But again, if the President hasn't scheduled the call with the Prime Minister yet, the White House could perhaps explain why he hasn't done that.
Hopefully that'll happen sooner rather than later. Minister LeBlanc, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Have a great Sunday. Thanks, Mercedes.